Thanks for joining us today, guys. Today we are joined by Sam Harris and excited to have him share a little bit about his journey that kind of bounces around a bunch of different directions and it gives us a very different perspective. So, Sam, you mind introducing yourself to the audience?
Hi, I'm Sam. I am 31. I started my first business when I was 21 at university, and I'd already done some travel before that. And I just very much wanted to just do the things I was interested in and was never interested in having a boss or being tied to one place. And I really optimized to try and be able to travel a lot. So I've been able to live in 5 different countries and been to almost 60 now, including North Korea and hitchhiking across Kazakhstan. And after my first business, which, well, I managed to sell it after 4 years, and basically have been investing in startups and other things to try and keep myself from having a real job and having freedom, really. So it's a cool opportunity to be on this podcast to talk about how I've tried to go around that and probably find the things I've done wrong, because there's been plenty of mistakes.
Did you ever go find a quote unquote real job, or was it always hustling or
Um,
entrepreneuring
yeah, so
to
when I was
innovate?
16, I was a lifeguard, which I guess is a real job. After my business, so I wasn't technical at all with the first business, and I studied biology. So I did want to learn more about tech because I was very interested in like tech startup and things. So I actually my one of my mentors was a CFO for a company in AI doing emotion analytics, and I basically asked if I could come and help them out for a month for free. And I just hustled a lot and basically followed the CEO everywhere and helped him with whatever I could, and ended up making some sales to the point where like they may as well just give me a job. So I ended up having a job with them for 6 months. And the first 3 months was amazing because of I basically made up my job as I was going along and was very entrepreneurial. And then as the company was growing, they gave me a permanent like product manager position, as like head of product and stuff, which was great as I didn't know that much about product. And I learned a lot in the first month of that. And by the second 2 months, I was already bored. I was like, okay, I've already decided what we need to do for the roadmap. I've spoken to everyone. And now I've just got to wait for developers to build the thing. And I'm really bored. And it was too constricting. And after 6 months, I went a bit crazy and had to leave. Yeah, I had a job for a bit, basically, which was fun whilst I was learning.
So you talked a little bit about freedom, right? And getting to the point where you're using money for freedom. What does that mean to you?
It means choice to basically spend time working on things that you just want to work on for the love of working on it, as opposed to necessarily money. So I've tried to be able to not have to worry about money too much on the things that I'm doing directly, assuming that over the next 2 years, I'm going to do a few different things. One of them will probably pay very well, one of them won't. And so I've spent 3 months living in Israel teaching people how to code for free, kind of stuff, and then started businesses that didn't make money for a few years, but it was okay because I was being able to live out of savings and there was other investments that were sort of going in the right direction, even if that thing went tits up. And that's been really, really nice in some ways. Although in other ways, I'm kind of a bit like actually having this much freedom is a bit of a problem in that it saves me from having to make hard decisions like just sit down and be reliable. I'm not sure if I even could be, so perhaps this is a good thing.
Part of the personality, right? So,
Yeah.
as you were going through and you started earning money, right? It sounds like, hey, you had some savings over here, you were investing in some companies, right? So you had some things that you were placing bets on, so to speak, to give yourself um, optionality, we'll call it, in the future, right? But
Yeah.
what was the mindset that you were going through? How did you land on, hey, I should put some in savings, or hey, I should invest in this company, right? Versus investing back in your
I
existing
think it's a
company or going on a trip for.
yeah. So it's trying to be quite rational around it in terms of your risk reward ratio and how much security you want in things and when do you need the cash. So like startup investing, on paper, I've done a very good job of startup investing. My portfolio is up over 10x at this point, but I haven't really realized much of that cash yet. And it could be another few years before I really get that back, if at all. So it could still go to zero for all I know. Whereas other things are more reliable. So um, it basically depends on like when you want the freedom with that money that you're putting in. So I went for like a third into property, which is very much a safer investment and gives you reliable income, and a third into oh no, wait, quarter, 4 quarters. Don't know how I messed that up. So like a quarter into like really sensible stuff like pensions and ISAs and things. Quarter into property. Quarter in like the stock market into the more sort of aggressive tech stocks and things which have not had the best time just lately. And then the rest into sort of startups and crypto and exciting things that could moon. And maybe I can never even think about money again in a few years' time, maybe, and maybe not. And I figured if I kept up that sort of investing profile over 10 years, at some point, some of those things will work out very well with the whole, if you invest in 100 startups, one of them's going to be huge kind of level. And today it looks like I'm hitting that ratio pretty well, but we'll see
Nice.
because you can't really count things too early.
How did you
That,
decide? Did you have different advisors that you went to help in these different areas? Did you self-teach in terms of, pension versus stocks versus real estate versus,
mm,
picking companies to invest in?
yeah, so I did have an accountant that sort of helped a bit on like the tax implications of some of these things. And my first investment was actually from a friend who'd invested in Brewdog. I don't know if you've heard about them, like in their very early rounds. And I thought that'd be kind of cool. And that was like the very first startup I invested in. But after that, I thought about it more just myself of things that I felt, I guess I recognized one of my skills was being early on stuff. Even sort of as a kid, I was always into music before everyone else was. And I just kind of noticed that I sort of was good at trend setting. And I think part of like my ADHD and getting bored of stuff quickly does mean that I'm kind of a bit ahead on these things. So, I mean, I was starting to get into investing, and then like a few years later, sort of free trade came up as like a thing that was something I could invest in, which is kind of like a clone of Robinhood. And I just thought that's such a obvious thing that needs to happen because of it costs me lots. And there's so many millennials and people my age that want to make more money without working, but can't because of it costs them a bit of money. And like being able to use an app where they can trade for free is like so obvious. And that investment's now, yeah, gone up about 1,000x from when I invested in. So yeah, just thought I have lots more ideas and I have time to actually execute on building them. So being able to invest in startups lets me invest in the kind of things that I'm having ideas in anyway, which was something that kind of drew. And maybe if I wasn't like that, I maybe wouldn't have thought quite so much to put it into startups. I think it was more part of my personality actually, as opposed to advice, because I guess I spoke to my parents and they were very much like, just do sensible stuff, which might be why there's a bit more in my pension and stuff than I would have had otherwise.
So it sounds like part of your zone of genius, right? And fits your personality and your disposition, right? Is that early adoption of trends, right? And so on that
Yeah.
adoption curve, you're on the early part.
And
Right.
I think I do have a very big risk appetite, if that makes sense. As in, I'm a bit bored by security um, in some ways.
Well, so that kind of leads into the next question, right? In terms of sometimes you can be too early, right, on
Yeah,
some of those companies, right? And so is it very much just an odds and a numbers game of hey, this idea makes sense and eventually we'll be here. This is the company that's here
yeah,
now.
definitely. I think going into a few different things. So I've invested in a few different sort of financial apps, and I was being a crappy vegetarian ages ago and was like, yeah, things that just make it easy to be a vegetarian. Definitely can invest in quite a few of these different things, and that's working out quite well. Um, Currently, uh, I've noticed that I start wanting to dressing up as a woman sometimes or wear makeup just for fun. And I'm not actually homosexual, but I'm just like, hey, if I'm doing this, I feel like more people are going to be doing it. And then actually, there's lots of drag stuff going on TV lately, but I've made a few investments in that area, and I don't know, might be the next big thing, might not, but it's the kind of things that like I feel a bit crazy saying it right now, but that's probably in 10 years time will be kind of normal. But yeah,
That's
it's
fascinating. And
just
just, you
because it's easy
definitely
to look
on.
back at 10 years ago and be like, oh, obviously millennials are going to start doing lots of investing. But at the time, it was a bit like, well, no one does bloody investing because if you've got to get a freaking stock trading app and, well, account and it's going to cost you like £10 to trade something, you've only got like 50 quid anyway, what's the point? Whereas now it's sort of super obvious. But yeah, trying to think about things that are actually sort of weird at the moment that I'm actually doing is sort of helpful, I guess, to say that,
And
okay,
it's
I'm
interesting
putting
because
into risky.
you like living on that edge, right? Like as soon as
Mm,
everyone starts doing it, I think you get bored and you go do something else, right? So
yeah.
as soon as that starts to hit, any sort of mass, right, you're on to the next thing, and so it always keeps you on that front end of trends, innovation, right, wherever your interests are taking you. It sounds like.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, as you've gone through these different things, right? Like you've talked about being able to give back and just taking, where your heart and mind want you to go, right? Coding for free, doing X, Y, Z. You obviously have your investments that are slightly different that give you the property, I assume, gives you cash flow, gives you a nice safety net. You've probably got some
Mm,
tucked away in savings that's liquid. But as you
yeah.
mentioned, all your biggest investments or the ones that are returning really high numbers that you're talking about are probably locked up, right? Like you can't take the equity out of these companies.
Yeah.
So how do you balance chasing something that's a passion project, right? That might draw down on savings over here versus, something that pays you more money that you start putting into these different quadrants again.
It is a bit difficult. I guess it's the thing with ADHD is you can focus really well and execute on stuff, but you don't necessarily control what it is that that's going to be. And so if in every 2 or 3 years time there's something that sort of does pay me quite well in cash, then like I just don't even have to think about it at all, which is nice. But like my last startup was running it for a few years and didn't really pay me lots, and I'm now at the point where I'm not that interested in it. And so I'm kind of okay, I've been going into cash savings, so I'm now currently sort of thinking about this around, okay, do I do something that pays me better? Do I just do something that doesn't cost me any money so I don't have to try and get money out of my investments? Or because I'm currently thinking about like cycling around the world because that's super cheap and enjoyable, and I can still do the odd bit of investing and fun stuff. And I'm like, okay, that's nice. And also I've had the podcast for the whole time, which has also been something that's grown really well for me, does pay, which is super handy. So I've got something that's kind of like a permanent safety net, which is nice. But I mean, it still takes a bit of work, but it's not much work, which is great. It took a lot of work to get it to something that was good like that, if that makes sense. And actually, I did take my eye off the ball on it over the last year, and the quality dropped a bit. So I have become a bit more obsessive on any episode that goes out and really making things perfect. So before we started this episode, I asked you how much editing you do on your podcast because of you can make a podcast really good even when you have like a kind of bad interview if you just absolutely cut it down, and you can basically, if you talk to anyone for an hour, there's something in there that's kind of good, and you can turn it into 10 minutes of that person being a genius even if they're a complete idiot. Because you can just mold, it's like a set of paints, and then you can just sort of paint whatever the hell you want with the words that they've said, um, which sounds kind of odd, but it's really nice and like crafting storytelling. So yeah, I do kind of enjoy that as well, which is handy at least as a bit of a fallback if everything else
Something
is
I
going to
believe as
shit.
well, right? There's always something you can learn from people, right? And there's
Yeah,
always
also
nuggets
that.
in there. And if you listen properly and you find, right, like there's something you can take away personally, right? And there's definitely something for the
Yeah,
audience in every conversation. It's a matter of
definitely.
highlighting it, right? So it doesn't get lost
Yeah,
in
yeah,
everything else.
which is very easy for it to happen. And sometimes you can ask someone a question and they'll start with a really crap answer, but at some point they'll actually say something that's sensible. And if you just sort of take that bit out and like remove the rest of it, it's great. But no, it just kind of gets left and lost. And yeah, I remember interviewing a guy, it was pretty early on when I started, who I interviewed him for like an hour and a half, and his intern sat through the whole interview and she was bored as hell. And then I edited it down to like a 45-minute interview, and she's like, "Oh my God, my boss is a genius. How did this happen? I don't even remember this guy being so good." I'm like, I just cleaned up like the edges around how he made the statements and things. Or he'd say something like, some of the top tips for doing this, so like this and this. It just didn't sound that compelling compared to like the top tips to make sure you do this. It just sounds like, oh crap, this is the best thing to listen to, as opposed to like something that maybe is worth listening to or whatever. And you just it's really interesting to watch or to hear how different a conversation can come across just by the way you edit it. And that is I think it's what you notice how genius some people are that can do like their live podcast where it's just them talking purely, and you're like, holy shit, some people actually just talk like that, and like politicians and things. And I'm not that good, sadly, but maybe one day.
Do you do your own editing, or do you have a team that does that for you?
So I after the first year and a half, I got people to edit for me, and right now I'm just getting a bit more obsessive about around how I check it and really educating anyone that's doing my editing to make sure it's perfect again after it dropped a bit, because
Nice.
yeah.
What does ideal state for Sam look like? Right?
Ideal
Like,
state.
yeah, what are you doing work-wise? Like, where are your investments, right? Like, you don't strike me as someone who's going to work really hard for several years to make a crap load of money and just have it sit, right? So,
Yeah.
curious what that, there's
Um
always an exploratory, it sounds like, with you,
yeah,
but
there's
like,
always an adventure element. So one of my businesses was an adventure business, which was fun. When I was doing that, I lacked the personal time, and felt like I was doing too much admin. So my ideal state, right, is not having to do email. I've come to the conclusion because I'm shit at it, and just spending time really doing the things that are more like my flow zone. So like I really like writing, but if I'm doing too much managing and other stuff, I've worked out like I just can't do any of the flow stuff as such. So that's also why I kind of want to go cycling at the moment, is because I figured when I'm doing that, I find it very easy to do just the things I want to do, which is I can spend the morning writing without anything else going on in my head, spend 5 to 6 hours a day exercising, which is great, and then also be creative in the evening and make music and stuff. And that's really nice.
so for those listeners, right, they're listening and they're like, so Sam wants to write for 4 to 5 hours, exercise for 4 to 5 hours, and then make music for 4 to 5 hours. Like, how does he make money, and how can you sustain this life, right? Like,
Mm.
what would you tell
Well,
to
if
them?
you're cycling, it doesn't cost any money. It's like you can live off £10 a day and camp in the wild and stuff. So it doesn't cost much. And if you're writing, you can make money doing that. Um, so, I mean, if you're writing your own stuff for a book and you haven't got anyone to publish it, then you're not going to be making any money until it comes out. But if you are posting something short on Medium every day, I've had quite a few articles on there that have gone pretty well. So you can easily make a few grand on Medium a month just writing, which is nice. Uh, Again, if you are writing content for other people, some people aren't very good at making content. So if you're solving a problem for them, you can make a lot of money if you're actually writing content for others, but without having too much distraction around that. So I find I'm not natural ability at writing where some people can kind of balance that with lots of other chaos going on. So I couldn't be writing for like 5 different clients and sort of handling like the admin side of job, but like just working with one set of people. So I'm helping this one crypto startup who's making a lot of content for YouTube and things and writing their scripts for them. And that's something I quite enjoy. And I find I see a lot of parallels because my mind kind of is very exploratory and constantly goes in tangents. So just writing things around crypto and NFTs and stuff, I end up sort of seeing parallels into like just success in like life, the world, other businesses and things, and it gives me ideas for other stuff, which is quite nice. So having something to force me to write on one area helps me write in all the other areas as well.
So it sounds like there's also a component that we haven't touched on, which is very much you've reduced your cost of living pretty substantially in terms of, I'm guessing you don't have car payments. I'm guessing you don't have
Yeah,
kids
my
running around the
car.
house, or, large
Mm.
house or flat or anything like that, so that it gives you flexibility to move about as you would want, where you want, in a way
Yeah,
that suits you.
certainly a massive luxury not having uh, specific bills I really have to pay. Yes, I yeah, my car doesn't cost me very much, and didn't have a car for a while when I was doing a lot more traveling. And that's why I was talking about doing the biking, because that's something I could definitely gives you lots of adventure for not much cost. In if I'm doing things that are more high value work that I need to be somewhere. So I did travel the world contracting at the same time, and was able to pay for more expensive Airbnbs and fancier nomad offices and things, which was also nice, where I knew I could get like a reliable internet connection and be on calls every day and do stuff and still have lots of adventure at the same time, which was fine. But yeah, definitely need to balance like what your outgoings are. And the easiest way to get rich is to just not spend much money at all. And then it's always going up as long as you're doing something to make money come in. But I think, well, on a different, well, a very related tangent, I'm not even sure if this is a tangent, but I do sometimes envy a lot of people that travel or do stuff where they actually do just switch off. Because for all the adventures and stuff that I've done in the last 10 years, I've never really done something for more than a few days where I haven't then also been doing some work. So like, I mean, I was in North Korea for 5 days, so I couldn't do any work then, or I have done like some 10-day silent meditation retreats. But pretty much those are the only times where I haven't had like a laptop open doing something for an hour or two. And yeah, I think actually maybe just taking 6 months off and just sort of doing hiking or stuff that's properly nothing is a different way of doing things that some people really, really enjoy. Whereas I've been more like mini retirements where I've still done a bit of stuff at the same time. Actually, yeah, okay. I did actually retire for 6 months and just did like music production, which is just really fun, which I didn't want to make any money out of. I just wanted to make music for a while. That was after the first business and just think about life. Anyway, I'm now starting to tangent even harder, so we can rein it back into whatever your next question is.
So it sounds like a lot of your life is about optimizing for adventure or passion, right? And money's
Yeah.
a byproduct of that you store up as needed to give yourself a little safety cushion, but you've got all these different opportunities that can present themselves where you can plug in and do what you need to continue to sustain and build on those kind of two main passions.
Yeah. I guess you, yeah, I think so. And I think there's more people that are kind of going in that direction. And I do meet a lot of people out there doing the sort of things that I do, but who don't have much money in the bank. And that sort of concerns me also, because I'm like, okay, I feel really rich because I, you know, do have quite a lot of money, relatively speaking, compared to the average 30-year-old.
You've got a nice
Doing
safety
stuff
net,
that's fun.
right? Where you can go do these things and know you've got time
Yeah,
if
yeah.
needed,
And
right?
it's good to, well, it's really nice having investments to know that, okay, I could actually literally just go to a monastery and meditate for a year and stuff is going in sort of the right direction, or at least if I did it for like 10 years, it overall is well allocated.
What's the most exciting thing you're working on or doing today?
Interesting question. um, I don't know, I'm having a bit of a step back and refocus on things. So I
What
have
gets your juices flowing that in the morning when you get up, you're like, I'm excited to go tackle X, or
yeah,
think about or do X.
I don't even have to try and make myself go and do. I just keep on going and doing it anyway each day, and I'm like, yes, this is awesome. And there was some time where I was allowed to do this. This is fun. If that technically answers the question of the most exciting thing,
Yeah.
I'm definitely really excited for doing some more travel again. So one thing that is annoyed me, that is a freedom that money can't get me out of, is that I have to go to a few best friends' weddings this year, uh, which does mean that I have to be in the UK a few times, and the place where I can have adventures most accessibly is Europe. And because of Brexit, I'm only allowed to go there for 90 days and then I'm stuck. Otherwise, yeah, I'd probably be in Mexico right now, or Colombia, or something that I'm much more excited about. So, woe is me. Jesus, it's really tough.
I just
I
have
can't
to
even
travel
explain.
Europe.
Yeah, fuck. It's hard, man. But I'm actually, what I'm really excited about with my podcast is I've had some really cool people on the show lately that have just overcome some crazy setbacks, uh, which is just sort of reminded me that life is really short and that you really do have to optimize for doing adventure and stuff, if that's what you're into. Because yeah, I've had people that have broken their backs and are now still climbing mountains and things, even though they occasionally shit themselves and can't control certain parts of their legs, and you're like, bro, you're a legend and stuff. And yeah, I also had a few people die this year, and like one of my ex-girlfriends who I'm quite close friends with just had a car crash and broke both her femurs and was in a coma for a while. I'm just like, I should really just do the stuff that makes me happy. So I'm kind of excited to just not not be working too hard on stuff that's boring and go and do exciting things whilst I still can.
What's for the audience who wants to connect back with you, Sam? What's the best way for them to get in touch?
Well, as we mentioned, email's not my strongest point. LinkedIn, if you send me a message saying why you're getting in touch, or actually even Instagram sometimes. samjam.zen.
What are the people that when they message you, you get excited to respond to?
Good question. People who are doing adventurous stuff definitely helps. If they are running a business that's really cool and doing something sort of innovative and does have a path to how it would actually make money and isn't just like slightly pie in the sky, that's also interesting. Like I do really like helping entrepreneurs and people starting things and people that are doing something that's creative. I'm very into creative stuff as well.
Awesome. Well, appreciate you spending some time and sharing your perspective today, Sam. It was a pleasure having you on the show.